There is a part of your body that you have never met. Not a hidden organ, not a microscopic structure you'd need a laboratory to examine. A part of you that is in constant use, that carries your entire weight every waking hour, that contains more nerve endings per square centimeter than almost any other surface on your body, and that you have kept sealed inside a dark, rigid container since before you could form a memory. Your feet, the soles of your feet, the two surfaces that connect you physically, electrically, structurally, to the ground beneath you. You've spent your entire life in shoes. Your parents put you in shoes before you could walk. The shoes changed as you grew. The style evolved. The brand varied. But the fundamental condition never changed. Your feet have been wrapped in material, separated from the earth, enclosed in artificial structures, for as long as you've been alive. And it never occurred to you to ask why. Not whether to wear shoes, not which shoes to buy. Why? Why does every modern human cover the soles of their feet from infancy to death? Why is barefoot walking, which was the default human condition for the vast majority of our species' existence, now considered primitive, unhygienic, dangerous, or at minimum, socially unacceptable in virtually every public space in the industrialized world? Why did the human species, which evolved barefoot, which developed its bipedal anatomy over millions of years of direct contact between foot and ground, which built every ancient civilization in bare feet or minimal sandals, why did this species decide within a remarkably short historical window that the foot must never touch the earth? I started asking this question after reading a study that I haven't been able to stop thinking about, a study measuring the electrical conductivity between the human body and the Earth's surface, because the Earth has an electrical charge. The surface of the planet maintains a negative electrical potential, a reservoir of free electrons that is continuously replenished by atmospheric electricity, primarily lightning. This isn't mysticism. This is measured physics. The Earth is an electrical body, and when a human being stands barefoot on the ground, the electrical potential between the body and the Earth equalizes. Electrons flow from the ground into the body. The body's electrical charge shifts, measurably, documentably, using equipment that any physics undergraduate could operate. The study measured what happens when this connection is maintained over time. What happens when a human being spends extended periods in direct electrical contact with the Earth's surface? The results were consistent across multiple research teams. Reduced inflammation markers in the blood, changes in blood viscosity, measurable effects on cortisol rhythms, altered autonomic nervous system activity. The electrical connection between foot and ground appeared to produce a systemic physiological response that affected multiple body systems simultaneously. This raises a simple but critical question. If the human body responds physiologically to direct contact with the Earth's surface, what happens when that contact is permanently severed? The deeper I went, the more I found that this question has been asked before. Not by modern researchers, by every ancient civilization that left records of its understanding of the human body and its relationship to the natural world. And the answer, across cultures, across continents, across millennia, was remarkably consistent. The foot was sacred. The connection between foot and earth was considered foundational to human health, spiritual practice, and psychological balance. Not metaphorically, functionally. In traditional Chinese medicine, the sole of the foot contains the kidney 1 acupuncture point, known as Yongquan, the bubbling spring, considered the primary point through which earth energy enters the body. In Ayurvedic medicine, walking barefoot on the earth was prescribed as a treatment for insomnia, anxiety, and inflammatory conditions. In indigenous traditions across North America, Africa, Australia, and South America, barefoot contact with the earth was not just normal, it was medicine. It was how you healed, how you connected, how you maintained the relationship between the human body and the living planet that sustained it. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision across every pre-industrial culture I examined. The barefoot condition wasn't primitive. It wasn't a sign of poverty or underdevelopment. It was a recognized technology of health, a practice maintained not through ignorance of footwear, but through understanding of what was lost when footwear severed the connection between body and ground. And then, in a remarkably compressed historical window, the shoe became mandatory, not through a single decree, through something more pervasive, through the same mechanism I've found operating in every investigation I've pursued. The redefinition of natural as primitive, the reframing of ancient practice as backward, the replacement of a body-centered technology with an industry-centered product, and the simultaneous erasure of the knowledge that made the old practice intelligible. The silence was deafening. Start with the history of shoes themselves, because the timeline is revealing. Humans have been making footwear for a long time. The oldest known shoes date back roughly 8 to 10,000 years. Sandals, open-soled coverings designed to protect the foot from sharp objects and extreme temperatures while maintaining substantial contact between the sole and the ground. For most of human history, footwear was minimal, seasonal, and functional. You wore sandals on rocky ground. You wore wrappings in snow. You went barefoot the rest of the time. The foot maintained contact with the earth as the default condition. The enclosed shoe, the structure that seals the entire foot in an artificial environment, is a much more recent invention, and its widespread adoption as a daily necessity for all social classes, not just the wealthy, occurred primarily in the 18th and 19th centuries. The same period, the same narrow historical window that keeps appearing in every investigation I pursue. The period of industrialization, the period when every connection between the human body and the natural world was systematically severed and replaced with an industrial product, as if they were following instructions they didn't fully understand. The deeper I went into the industrial history of footwear, the more the shoe started to look less like a tool and more like a disconnection device, because the modern shoe doesn't just protect the foot, it isolates it. The rubber sole, which became standard in the late 1800s with the development of vulcanized rubber by Charles Goodyear's process, is an electrical insulator. Rubber doesn't conduct electricity. A human being standing in rubber-soled shoes on the surface of the earth is electrically disconnected from the ground. The electron transfer that occurs during barefoot contact is completely blocked. The body maintains whatever electrical charge it has accumulated without any pathway to equalize with the Earth's surface. Before rubber soles, shoes were made with leather. Leather, when moist, which it usually was from the sweat of the foot, is a modest electrical conductor. A person wearing leather-soled shoes maintained some degree of electrical connection to the ground, not as much as barefoot, but some. The transition from leather to rubber soles in the late 19th and early 20th centuries didn't just change the material of footwear, it changed the electrical relationship between human beings and the planet they walk on. It created, for the first time in the entire history of the species, a condition of permanent electrical isolation from the Earth's surface. This raises a question that I cannot stop returning to. Was this intentional? Was the rubber sole adopted because it was cheaper and more durable, which it was, or was it adopted because it accomplished something that cheaper and more durable are convenient explanations for? Did the industrialists who mass-produced rubber-soled shoes understand what they were severing? Or did they simply find a material that worked for their purposes and let the consequences accumulate unnoticed? I don't know. I can't prove intent. But I can trace timing, and the timing is this. The widespread adoption of rubber-soled shoes in the late 1800s and early 1900s coincides precisely with the beginning of the modern epidemic of inflammatory disease. Chronic inflammation, which underlies heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune conditions, arthritis, and dozens of other conditions that constitute the bulk of modern chronic illness, was relatively rare in pre-industrial populations. It exploded in the 20th century. The medical establishment attributes this to diet, to sedentary lifestyle, to environmental toxins, to stress, all valid factors, all documented contributors. But none of them accounts for the totality of the epidemic. None of them explains why inflammation became the defining feature of modern disease at precisely the moment when the human body was permanently disconnected from the electrical surface of the earth. The official explanation collapses here. Because the grounding research, the studies measuring the physiological effects of electrical contact between the human body and the earth consistently shows anti-inflammatory effects, reduced inflammatory markers, changes in white blood cell behavior, shifts in blood chemistry that correspond to reduced systemic inflammation. The connection reduces inflammation. The disconnection, by logical extension, permits it to accumulate. Go read the research yourself. Pull up Oshman's work on earthing and inflammation. Pull up the studies on grounded sleep. Pull up the blood viscosity research. Pull up the cortisol studies. The literature is small but growing, and the results are remarkably consistent. Every study that has measured the physiological effects of grounding has found measurable effects. Not placebo. Measurable. Documented with the same instruments and the same methodologies used in any other physiological study. And the medical establishment's response has been near total silence, not refutation, not counter-studies demonstrating no effect. Silence. The grounding research isn't rejected, it's ignored. It exists in a professional vacuum, published in journals, presented at conferences, and absent from clinical practice. No doctor prescribes barefoot walking. No hospital grounds its patients. No medical school teaches the electrical relationship between the human body and the Earth's surface. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision. Because every investigation I've conducted has arrived at the same structural observation. A natural practice that connected the human body to the natural world is replaced by an industrial product that severs that connection. The replacement is justified by convenience, by progress, by modernity. The severance produces health consequences that the medical establishment treats with additional industrial products, pharmaceuticals, therapies, interventions, rather than by restoring the original connection. And the knowledge that the original connection was meaningful, that its severance has consequences, that the ancient practices weren't superstition but science, that knowledge is classified as alternative, as fringe, as not evidence-based, despite the evidence. The deeper I went into the history of barefoot cultures, the more I found that the shoe wasn't just adopted, it was imposed. Colonial administrators across Africa, Asia, and the Pacific Islands made the wearing of shoes a marker of civilization. Missionaries distributed shoes alongside Bibles. Colonial schools required shoes as part of the uniform that separated the educated from the primitive. The barefoot became a symbol of backwardness, of poverty, of everything that the colonial project claimed to be rescuing its subjects from. And the shoe became a symbol of progress, of civilization, of participation in the modern world. Go look at photographs of colonial-era schools in Africa and India. Look at the children's feet. Shoes. Required. Mandated by institutions that were simultaneously dismantling every other connection between indigenous populations and their traditional knowledge systems. The shoe wasn't a gift. It was a severance tool. It disconnected colonized people from the earth their ancestors had walked on barefoot for millennia, from the electrical relationship their traditional medicine systems had recognized and their healing practices had utilized. Here's what I keep returning to. The nerve density. Because the sole of the human foot contains approximately 200,000 nerve endings, more per square centimeter than almost any other part of the body. More than the fingertips, more than the lips. The foot is a sensory organ of extraordinary sophistication. It was designed through millions of years of evolutionary pressure to read the ground, to feel the terrain, to detect temperature, texture, moisture, vibration, to receive information from the surface of the earth and transmit it to the body with a resolution and a richness that no other body surface matches. And we sealed it in a box. We took the most neurologically dense surface on the human body, a surface that evolved specifically to interface with the earth, and we wrapped it in foam and rubber and leather and synthetic fabric and cut it off from every signal it was designed to receive. We didn't just cover the foot, we blinded it, we deafened it. We created a condition of permanent sensory deprivation for the body part most specialized for environmental sensing. And then, when the foot weakened, when the arch collapsed, when the ankle destabilized, when the plantar fascia inflamed, when the toes deformed into the shape of the shoe rather than the shape of the foot, we blamed the foot. We said the foot was flawed, that it needed support, that without the artificial structure of the shoe, the foot would fail. The foot didn't fail. It was failed by a device that prevented it from functioning as it was designed to function. I'm not telling you to throw away your shoes. The modern world is built for shod feet. The surfaces we walk on, concrete, asphalt, tile, are not the surfaces the foot evolved for. Glass, metal debris, chemical contaminants. These are real hazards that footwear genuinely protects against. I'm not arguing against foot protection. I'm asking why foot protection became foot imprisonment. Why the entire sole of the foot, every nerve ending, every sensory receptor, every electrical contact point must be sealed away from the earth at all times, in all conditions, from infancy to death. I'm asking what happens to a species that spends its entire existence electrically disconnected from the planet it evolved on. I'm asking why the anti-inflammatory effects of grounding have been measured and published and ignored. I'm asking why the most neurologically sensitive surface on the human body is treated as something that needs to be contained rather than something that needs to be heard. I'm asking what your feet would tell you if you let them touch the ground.